Nora Engel had practiced her father's memorial service so many times that the words no longer made sense. She mouthed them again while standing in the slick marble lobby of Elysian Rest, the city's most modern funeral home, watching a sales associate polish the curved lid of a walnut Echo-line coffin. Light glinted off the discreet panel where a speaker grill had been worked into the wood grain like a secret. "Ready, Ms. Engel?" asked the associate Mara, a woman with a voice softened by long hours among mourners. "One last audio test before the interment." Nora nodded. Her father, Hans, had always loved gadgets, and before the stroke, he'd recorded the required 30-second clip for Echo-line. "A message for whoever stops by," he'd said, clearing his throat. "Don't linger. Live. I'm fine. Go plant tomatoes for me," he laughed. Then, perfectly himself, Mara pressed a tablet. Inside the coffin, the speaker crackled, and his voice emerged warm and steady. Nora's knees wobbled even though she'd heard the file 20 times. The system worked on proximity sensors. A visitor within 2 meters of the headstone would trigger the playback via a low-power transmitter. The coffin remained sealed, the broadcast entirely one way. Comfort with none of the spiritual guesswork. That was Elysian Rest's promise. "Beautiful," Nora whispered. Mara powered the unit down and closed the lid. "We'll seal it after your service. All you have to do is place him in the earth, and he'll keep talking whenever someone comes." Nora managed a smile. That's what he would have wanted, someone listening to him forever. The funeral passed in a damp blur of lilies, folded hands, and the dull thump of soil on wood. When the mourners dispersed, Nora lingered with her brother Hugo, each of them staring at the new marble ledger marking their father's plot. After a moment, they stepped forward. The censor awoke. Hans Engel laughed again, told them to plant tomatoes, reminded them he was fine. Hugo, cheeks raw, laughed back. "It's strangely casual," he said. "He could be calling from the kitchen." "That's the point," Nora replied. "A soft landing." They left then, as instructed, to live and not linger. For a time, the device did exactly what the brochure promised. 2 weeks later, Nora returned alone. Summer had iced the cemetery grass with heat. She brought a basket of heirloom seedlings to honor the tomato request, brushing aside gnats as she knelt. Again, the sensor clicked. She steeled herself for the familiar clip. "I'm fine," her father proclaimed. "Go plant." A hiss swallowed the rest. Static rippled through the granite. Then a new phrase emerged, one Hans had never recorded. "They are folding the dirt above me." The words were low, almost conversational. "Tell the conductor I still have my ticket." Nora froze. "Dad?" Silence. The system must have malfunctioned, she thought. Maybe moisture had corrupted the file. She waved her hand to trigger another playback. Nothing. A third attempt coaxed only an electronic sigh, like wind through reeds. She called Elysian Rest as soon as she reached her car. The receptionist put her through to the technical manager, a lanky man named Victor Sonning, who responded with professional calm. "We do software updates over the air," he explained. "But the coffin receivers are simple. No microphone, no return channel. It plays only what was uploaded at installation. Corruption can happen, but it would produce gibberish, not a coherent sentence." "It was coherent," Nora insisted. She repeated the phrase. Victor paused long enough that she pictured him in a side office, brow furrowed at a monitor. "We'll run diagnostics on the server copy. If that checks out, we might need to excavate." "You dig him up?" "If necessary, to inspect the hardware." He cleared his throat. "But let's start with the easy end. I'll call you tomorrow." That call never came. Instead, Nora awoke to a flood of social media pings. Someone had filmed a nighttime visit to another Echo-line grave, this one belonging to a local history teacher named Mrs. Aldrich. The video showed 2 college students, half drunk, daring each other to trigger the speaker. They expected the teacher's recorded message, "Remember to read widely." What they captured instead was a rasping string of syllables, not English, but clipped and rhythmic, like Morse code, spoken through cracked teeth. One student joked about demons. The other posted the clip for the vibes. By noon, the funeral home's inbox overflowed with alarm. Echoline models across 3 states were misbehaving. Some repeated single, unknown words. Others coughed up entire monologues in voices no one recognized. All began the same week Nora heard her father mention the conductor. Elysian Rest scheduled a press conference. Nora attended as both client and marketing consultant. Crisis communication was part of her freelance work. In the chapel filled with cameras, director Margaret Dwyer stepped to the podium, her blazer the color of ocean fog. "We regret recent malfunctions," she said. "We are investigating potential interference from underground power lines and unauthorized radio transmissions." She reassured families that nothing paranormal was involved. "Technology occasionally surprises us. We will isolate the cause." Nora watched the crowd, reporters craving scandal, loved ones straddling grief and fascination. A woman in the front row held a printout of a transcript supposedly captured from her husband's grave. "Rain is a ceiling you can't repaint," it read. "Someone tell the captain we left the harbor." Nora glanced at her own notes. "They are folding the dirt above me. Tell the conductor I still have my ticket. Captain, conductor, cemetery of travel, departure." That night she drove to the cemetery again. No moon. She carried a flashlight, knees shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. At the grave, she held her breath and stepped inside the sensor's radius. Static. Then her father's voice, steady, unemotional. "I found my seat, row 91. The lights are off, but we're moving." "Dad, can you hear me?" she whispered. No microphone, she reminded herself. It couldn't hear. Yet after a short burst of crackle, the voice returned, softer. "Nora, the windows are full of sand. We thought it was snow, but it's warm." The speaker clicked off. She stumbled back, adrenaline scouring her veins. Even if the hardware had gained impossible two-way capability, how would it know her name? Her father's original recording briefly mentioned planting tomatoes, but never addressed her directly. The next day, she parked outside Elysian Rest with a thermos of espresso and refused to leave until she met Victor. He ushered her into a workshop littered with dismantled speakers and spools of antenna wire. "I pulled your father's file from the server," he said, handing her headphones. She braced for more horror, but the clip was unchanged, exactly as Hans recorded it. No mention of sand or tickets. "Could someone hijack the signal from outside?" she asked. "Technically, yes," Victor said, "but they'd need to broadcast on an ultra-low frequency, match the encryption handshake, and direct the beam through 5 feet of soil. Someone with that skill wouldn't waste it on cryptic riddles." Nora exhaled a shaky laugh, more panic than amusement. "So what next?" "We dig." Victor gestured at a freshly built crate holding replacement units. 3 families consented. "If you agree, your father can be 4th. We'll inspect the hardware in situ, record any transmissions, and—" A shout cut him off. Mara burst in, eyes wide. "Victor, you need to hear this. The testing chamber." They followed her to a room where a single Echoline coffin sat on a steel table for quality control. No body inside, just ballast weights. The unit was unplugged, sensors covered, yet the speaker murmured. Victor ripped off the shielding foam. The voice rose, distant and blurred like an old train station announcement. "Passengers between doors, secure belongings. We commence descent in 90 ticks." Victor yanked the power line from the wall. The voice kept talking. Only when he smashed the coil with a hammer did it fizzle into silence. Afterward, the 3 of them sat stunned amid splintered parts. "Battery backup?" Mara offered weakly. "No power source inside," Victor replied. He looked at Nora with something beyond fear. Wonder tinged with professional insult. The impossible had manifested on his workbench, hijacking his craft. "Whatever's speaking isn't coming from the coffin, it's coming through it." Nora's phone buzzed. Hugo's name. She answered, breath held. It's Dad, Hugo said, voice cracking. I put my ear down and I swear I heard him laughing. She closed her eyes, dizziness tilting the world. Get inside, lock the doors. There's more, he whispered. He says we should hurry. Says the journey's almost done. The line went dead. Nora drove across town in a blur, ignoring red lights. At the family home, garden rows glowed under street lamp halos. Tomato seedlings, still vulnerable, trembled, although no wind blew. She knelt, placed a palm on the earth. A faint buzz crawled into her bones, like leaning against subway rails. She pressed her ear closer until soil smeared her cheek. Voices, hundreds, overlapping, some pleading, some laughing, some counting in mechanical cadence, all distant as if traveling through a tunnel. She jerked back, heartbeat thrashing. Hugo met her on the porch. You heard them, he said. Not a question. Pack a bag, she replied. She had no plan, only the animal urge to flee. But where? The voices came from beneath them, beneath everywhere. As they argued, her phone lit with a group text from Victor, a series of low-frequency spectrograms. Underneath the swirl of noise was a recognizable pattern. Rows of ascending triangles. He wrote, Call when safe. Think it's a map. Nora called. He answered on the first ring. I cross-referenced the anomalies with local seismic activity, he said, words tumbling. Every time a Coffin broadcasts, we get a micro-tremor deep, not tectonic. Something is moving under the crust, creating a wave packet that the speakers pick up, like their antennas. Moving how, she asked. Laterally, slow but consistent, southwest to northeast. And the pattern repeats globally. I think we're picking up echoes of a transport system? He laughed once. Nothing joyful. A train under the graveyard of the world. Nora pressed her hand against the porch column to steady herself. Her father's references. Tickets. Conductor. Seats. Passengers. The other coffins mentioning descent. It fit, if she let go of everything rational. Where does the line end? Hugo asked, over her shoulder. Victor inhaled. Trajectory intersects the Marrow Rift, an ancient fault under the Atlantic. If something big's riding those tunnels, it'll reach the coast in about 18 hours. Something big, Nora echoed. And our dead are passengers. Or cargo, Victor said. Or simply listening from their boxes, same as us. Mara joined the call, voice trembling. Families are gathering at cemeteries. They think their loved ones are coming back. Hugo pinched the bridge of his nose. What do we do? Nora's mind, ever the strategist, sorted through the fragments. Voice messages, travel metaphors, global tremor. A picture formed, unbidden, terrible. Suppose ancient channels existed, bored by forces predating humanity, and the presence of the dead bodies rich with trace metals, salts, memory cold, act as relays once technology opened a frequency. Echoline's transmitters were the accidental key, tuning coffins into that subterranean network. The corpses became both antenna and amplifier, their residual identities drawn into the signal. Now something approached, something that spoke in conductor metaphors and springy static. We need to shut them off, Nora said. Every unit. Cut the link before it arrives. Victor hesitated. We can push a kill command to all coffins, but only if the meshed network cooperates. Right now it's swamped. The signal from below is stronger. Then we go manual, she said. Mara spoke quietly. We'd have to dig up thousands of graves. Start with the oldest routes, Nora insisted. Anything along the projected line. She pictured her father's plot, directly in the path. I'll handle my section. Within an hour, emergency crews, some hired, some volunteer, fanned across cemeteries with shovels and backhoes. Local news helicopters hovered, beams roaming like panicked eyes. Officials debated permits, health codes. Desperate families ignored them, clawing at sod barehanded. At dawn, Nora stood ankle-deep in her father's excavation trench. The sky bruised purple. She and Hugo had coaxed cemetery workers to expose the lid. Dirt trembled, not from machinery, but from a pulse below, slow as a giant heartbeat. She unscrewed the panel with Victor's borrowed toolkit. Anza's voice issued like breath over glass. "One stop left. Keep hands inside." The speaker glowed faint amber, though its power cable dangled free. She tore the board loose. The light died. The lid fell silent. Around them, others pried boards, cut wires, smashed circuits. Some coffins kept talking until the entire casing shattered. Others quit with a single screwdriver twist. The tremor beneath their feet lessened, as if whatever traveled there lost traction. But it did not stop. Victor arrived, dust-caked, waving his tablet. "We're making a dent. Signal amplitude down 30%, but the train's still moving. Time short." From the ridge, Nora saw a line of black hearses crawling toward the cemetery. Families bringing more dead to help fight the things, she realized. They planned to shut them off before burial, cut additional nodes. A morbid relay race. All morning Nora worked. Soil caked her nails, sweat glazed her spine. The voices thinned, some pleading, some chuckling as their speakers faded. Noon heat pressed like a lid. Underfoot, the earth sighed. Then, silence. Not a static pop, not a shiver. The ground went utterly still. Across the rows, people paused mid-gesture, tampers and crowbars raised, like freeze-frame theater. Victor looked up from his tablet. "Signal's gone." His tone brimmed with relief and a hint of dread. Either we stopped it, or it arrived. A collective hush rolled through the grounds, broken by a single bird cry. Then, from the open grave at Nora's feet, came a new sound, a groan of timber under strain, as though something far below shifted weight. The soil cracked, releasing a smell of deep stone and iron. "Nora," Hugo whispered. "Back up." The fissure widened, arcs of dirt collapsing. She stumbled away as a column of cold air roared upward, carrying dust and the metallic scent of old water. From the chasm rose a noise not of voice or engine, but a layered chorus. Tones beating against each other like wings, major and minor, thunder and flute. It grew until Nora's ribs vibrated, people scattered, screaming. Some dropped to their knees, covering ears. The sound built, blended, became almost music. Not melody, but architecture. Chords stacked into towers, then shattered into glittering shards. Nora, standing her ground, felt a strange comprehension. The song spoke in geometry, describing corridors that corkscrewed through stone, vaulted with pressure older than fossils. It told of a vessel sliding along those halls, unmoored from any map, its passengers neither alive nor dead, but printed on waves of resonance. The voices they'd heard were announcements, not invitations. The real arrival would dwarf them. As the cord peaked, the hole before her glowed with faint bioluminescent blue. Shapes churned, a glimpse of polished carapace, or car. She couldn't tell. Then, just as suddenly, the glow winked out. The music collapsed into a single note, low and soft, like a cello's last breath. Silence returned. Victor's tablet beeped. He looked, eyes wide. Signal dispersed completely. Whatever that was, it broke up. Hugo touched Nora's shoulder. "Think we scared it away?" "Or we severed its track," Victor murmured. "No more relays." They spent the rest of the day filing incident reports nobody would believe. Sealing pits, reinterring caskets. The city quarantined the cemetery under vague geological pretexts. At sunset, reporters begged for comment. Officials stonewalled. Rumors sprouted anyway. Secret drilling accidents, meteor impacts, mass hallucination. Weeks passed. Echoline recalled every product, issued refunds, rebranded themselves back to quiet tradition. Victor resigned, citing health. Mara moved to hospice work, where people expected odd thresholds. Margaret Dwyer faded from the news, whispering about lawsuits. Nora and Hugo replanted tomatoes in their father's garden. The seedlings thrived, red fruits swelling like hearts. Nights were peaceful, yet some dawns, when dew clung to leaves, Nora imagined she felt a slow humming beneath the roots, as if the world itself still coasted on unseen rails. She would kneel, palm the soil, listening for voices. None came. Still, memory persisted. A chorus of passengers deep below, seats unbuckled, wondering why the windows had darkened, an endless track severed near the shore, its echoes stranded. Occasionally the breeze carried a hollow undertone, a half-heard announcement. Nora would pause, breath caught, trying to parse the words. They always faded before meaning bloomed. Life resumed. But some nights she dreamed of folding dirt, of warm sand against glass, of her father smiling in row 91 as the conductor lifted a silver punch and clipped his ticket. In the dream, the punch fell silent, and her father looked up confused, as if the world outside his train had gone missing. When she returned, then he would turn to her, eyes clear, amused, and say, "Don't linger. Live." She'd wake, heart pounding, wondering whether he still traveled that buried line, searching for a station that no longer existed, or whether in cutting the signal she had finally let him rest. On those mornings, she walked to the cemetery before sunrise. The censer at his headstone was gone, the grave quiet as stone. She would stand there anyway, whispering updates about Hugo's new job, the tomato harvest, the silence in the soil. Then, before the sky brightened, she'd brush dirt from her knees and leave, following the old instruction to not linger, carrying with her the memory of voices that had ridden the dark beneath the earth and the fragile, human hope that some journeys, once halted, allow the travelers to sleep.